beautiful weather at the city center of Nigeria, Abuja, and the Federal Capital Territory, the FCT, and this is Business and Economy package to enlighten you on the matters that are likely to arise from the implementation of the Orosanye report by the present administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I am Ile Emeje. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu last week ordered the full implementation of the report of the Presidential Committee on the Rationalization and Restructuring of the Federal Government Parastatals, Commissions and Agencies, headed by retired accountant Mr. Stephen Orosanye. Special Advisor on Information and Strategy to the President, Mr. Bayo Onanuga, who disclosed its development, affirmed that the present administration had resolved to implement the Orosanye report to pave the way for a leaner government by merging some agencies and scrapping some others. Recall that former President Goodluck Jonathan had in 2012 set up the Stephen Orosanye panel to look into ways and means of cutting down cost of governance by restructuring the public service. Meanwhile, in 2021, former President Muhammadu Buhari also inaugurated 2 committees to complement the Stephen Orosanye report, while one of the committees, headed by a former head of service, Mr. Bokar Aji, was mandated to review the Orosanye report and the government white paper. The other committee, headed by Mrs. Amal Pepple, was mandated to review ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs, created between 2014 and 2021. Despite these attempts, the then administration did not act on the report. In this edition of Business and Economy, economic expert Dr. Akintunde Ogunsola, who is also a regular guest on this program, is my guest, joining us after the business news to discuss the likely matters that may result from the implementation of the Stephen Orosanye panel report. We'll be back in a moment.
Equity investors from the floor of the Nigerian capital market transacted in a turnover of 1.88 billion stocks last week, valued at 34.149 billion naira across 48,464 deals. On the advancers, Julie PLC, BZ and Sterling Bank led the list, appreciating with 60%, 27% and 14%. However, MTN Nigeria was top on the laggards, dipping with 18.19%, followed by Sunu Assurance and Nestle Nigeria PLC, depreciating with 18.18% each. During the week, all share index and market capitalization of listed equities surged by 3.27% to close at 98,737 units and 54.027 trillion naira. In volume terms, the financial services industry dominated the general activity level with 1.275 billion stocks, while the conglomerates and the oil and gas index contributed in 227 million stocks and 115 million stocks respectively. Meanwhile, the naira sells on the I and E window for 1,543 naira to the dollar, 1,956 naira to the pound sterling, and 1,718 naira to the euro. Ile Emeje, Aso Television News.
In case you just tune in, you are on to Business and Economy, and we are looking at the possible matters that may arise from the implementation of the Stephen Orosanye panel report. Our guest, as I mentioned earlier, is an economic expert, Dr. Akintunde Ogunsola. Doctor, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here again.
A lot of people have said that the economic dwindling across the globe, particularly that of Nigeria, is on the height of it. Do you agree with them?
Of course, that of Nigeria is a different case entirely. Actually, because of some tough decisions that has been taken by the government.
Okay, let's start with our topic for today, and We need to commence with a review of the Stephen Orosanye panel report. What are the basis of this report? As many people want to know. What are the basis of this Orosanye report?
In 2014, President Goodluck Jonathan had in mind to actually see how to cut down the cost of governance extensively. But the challenge he had was because of politics. He was unable to implement so many things that he wanted to do. He set up a committee on subsidy removal. He tried to remove the subsidy, he couldn't. The Orosanye report, he also felt, if I implement this report now, it might affect my second term agenda. He decided to keep it in a wardrobe. Also, the confab report was also given to him. And he looked at it again and said, if I implement this confab report, it will affect my second term agenda. And finally, he still lost the election.
Are you sure it's because of the second term? Because
it was because of second term. That's why he couldn't.
Reports had it from
all the TSA, all the beautiful policies he's supposed to actually, take the glory for implementing them. He shied away from them, waiting for winning the 2015 general election. But
some persons have come up to say that no, it's not because of second term or winning the second term election that President Goodluck was yearning or giving a listening ear to some persons' plea against the impact that will result from the implementation of these policies, not just the Orosanye report, like you said, like the TSA and whatever, and the rest of the policies that he introduced.
Policies, yes.
So beautiful policies, but he never implements them. Some persons have come up to say that it's because of the resultant effect from this, even though you have said that
it's political, actually, because it was about the time they are preparing for the primaries of election, and he needed to get the support of the North to clinch the second term ticket. So he said, okay, let me suspend all these policies and let's face politics. So by the time we come second term, then we begin to, implement. But at the end of the day, he didn't do the second term. But the basis for that, for the Orosanye report particularly, was actually to reduce the cost of governance. Imagine at that time, the exchange rate was about 130 something naira to $1. And as at that time in 2014, 10 years ago precisely, he felt that government was spending so much, not to talk of now. So if as at that time, the president was still having that feeling that the cost of running governance was getting high, then I don't know what we'll say compared to now. Maybe it's getting cheaper now, or it's still going triple.
We may go on the road high.
So if they are going higher, it's going higher and higher, increasing as a result of different economic factors, political factors, and all that. So the president felt, it's time for us to actually look into this matter. Having a very intelligent Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who was part of, that report. The report was submitted to her, and then she presented it to the Federal Executive Council then. And this report on restructuring and reducing the cost of governance was a good report. They don't have any political
undertone
or bad intention undertone, about this report. They were just looking for ways to save money for government so that they can invest that money in developing the country. And the Orosanye report was very fantastic. They quickly looked at what are the government agencies that are duplicating activities, duplicated responsibilities in government. EFCC, ICPC, they were established almost the same time. EFCC came 2004 by the then President Olusegun Obasanjo. The same thing with ICPC. We dream to fight corruption. The Bureau for Public Procurement and all those agencies, came into existence. And then the government now came and said, okay, yes, we want to do all this, but don't you think some of these departments that we are now expanding and blowing up to become agencies are going to be increasing the cost of governance? How can they still effectively perform if we are able to return them to the departments? Can they still perform? Those were the analysis and the assignment that was given to Mr. Orosanye, who is also a chartered accountant. and he critically analyzed all the government agencies. I can even tell you, even since then, after the 2014 report, we have more agencies that have even been created. We have the Northeast Development Commission, which was also created after that report. I don't know what will be the fate of that commission now. You know, these are government creating more agencies, creating more establishments due to several reasons. And then this report came, submitted to the Federal Executive Council, and then just awaiting president to say approve and implement. But the president said, let's wait. You know, it's not yet the right time. That was just the language, the timing. Everybody was like, it's not yet time. It's not yet time to do this. It's not yet time to remove subsidy. It's not yet time to implement an Orose report. It's not yet time to implement TSA. It's not yet time to implement confab. That confab report, one day, I believe that another
somebody somewhere,
it could be this president.
It's possible.
President Tinubu can wake up and say, where is that confab report? Let's dust it. Because we have a president that is so audacious. We give that to him. From the first day in office, he had the audacity to boldly say subsidy is gone. This is something that, you know, subsistent governments were shying away from that, you know, area. And he was able to boldly come out and say, this is it. And so many other things. He has been so audacious. We give that to him. But though there are some little challenges, possibly because they didn't properly do the roadmap, the homework very well on the implementation. So that's why we're having some little setbacks. But if they can actually sit down and look at things very well, I think we can, you know, sail out of this storm that we're actually passing through. Okay,
and if you are talking about cutting cost of governance, you are referring to the public servants or public service, as the case may be, and it will not be out of place for public servants to become jittery when you say you want to cut cost of governance. And most people, especially the civil servants, are concerned with that word, over-bloated personnel costs, which may likely affect some of them. And in recent time, the government announced the merging of some parastatals, and that added up to the fear. What can you say on this?
Yes, it's expected for them to be afraid that, oh, if they are cutting off, possibly there will be a kind of retrenchment or laying off, you know, of personnel. But the truth has to be told. Looking at the overall report, we continue to see our personnel budget increasing and increasing and increasing.
Our overhead?
And even overhead. The recurrent expenditure is taking a chunk of almost 40% of our budget.
Wow.
It calls for concern. So that we are not borrowing money to finance salary, to pay salary, and to pay running costs. Instead of us to be borrowing for development, you know, there has been that argument,
as the case may be,
you know, that when we borrow, why don't we borrow for capital, you know, investment or capital development instead of financing recurrent? All those arguments, you know, have been up as a result of continuous rise in the, you know, cost of running personnel and overhead and cost of running government as a whole. And then this government have woken up to say, yes, we need to start, irrespective of where they are starting from. Some people are saying, you want to cut cost of governance, and it's creating more ministry, blue economy that was not there, more ministers, more ministries, and you're talking of cutting down cost of governance, that it should start from his cabinet, from up. You know, some people have argued like that, but irrespective of where it's starting from, let us start from somewhere. Possibly by the time we merge some of these agencies together, and by the time we now say, this ministry only have about 2 agencies, maybe that will now prompt, oh no, let's merge this ministry too. You know, the aftermath of the implementation of this report can lead to merger of ministries as a whole to see that the cabinet is also reduced, and also to reduce the salaries they pay to ministers. They can give other ministers, you know, appointment. Like this ministry that the minister was suspended. I don't know what's going to happen to that ministry. Possibly it has to be merged or something. But I think humanitarian came up as a result of a United Nations General Assembly meeting that the last administration went to attend. And the United Nations, you know, specifically stressed more that they need to look into humanitarian, hunger, poverty, the SDGs, you know, they actually expanded that.
The poor Nigerians.
Yeah, and that's why a ministry was created. But the question is, do we need a ministry to implement?
But do we need a ministry?
That's the question. Okay. To implement the United Nations report on, fight against hunger. These are part of the SDGs that we have, and they try to create a ministry that will address those problems. But that's another question anyway. Now, talking about their fears, yes, they can have their fears, but government is assuring, the Labour Congress is also assuring that there are terms at which the government can retrench or lay off workers. And if government is laying off workers, I believe that government will also create more jobs. Government have the capacity and the capability to create jobs in other sectors, and then thereby moving labor from being redundant to a more productive, ministry or agency. So their fears are there. Definitely some persons will lose their job. It might be temporal, but they also need to begin to think out of the box now before it gets to their doorstep on, okay, if peradventure my ministry is now scrapped, what next for me? It's good for them to begin to think. The fact that the ministry will be, scrapped or agency will be merged does not mean that that's the end of the world. They can also still become more productive in other areas. So people need to begin to think out of the box. What business, what can I do and all that? And that will help them.
Like you said, some persons have expressed concern, or they have argued that instead of trimming the workforce of the public servants, why won't the government trim its cabinet?
Yeah, we are starting from somewhere. Yes, somebody have said, let's start from up instead of from down. Whether starting from up or from down, the most important thing is that let us start from somewhere. Let us start retracing, the good part from anywhere. If we are starting from down to up, fine. If we are starting from up to down, but the most important thing is that let us reduce the cost of governance, irrespective of where it's starting from. Just like I said, by the time they begin to merge some of these agencies, it will become obvious that some ministries don't have more than 2 departments and agencies under them. So why should they be a ministry? They need to just merge them. Instead of merging from up, before you now begin to reduce the agencies, let's start also like this. Let's reduce the agencies, and then if the ministry becomes less important, we can now look at either scrapping some ministries or also merging. But I doubt if we'll scrap. Rather, for the ministries, it's better to merge than to actually scrap.
All right. Again, if we look at the implication this might pose on the general well-being of the public servants, many analysts, economic analysts in particular, your colleagues, they have also argued that there are social, economic, and political implications of the implementation of these reports. Do you agree to this?
Oh, yes, there are implications, but those implications, especially the social aspect that, okay, people may tend to want to take to crime or do corrupt activities and all that.
Create more ills in the society? Create
more ills in the society. I can tell you that government also have the capacity to also curb that with the security architectures we have. We have the EFCC, the ICPC, the police. They need to be up and doing in what they are doing, so that even if somebody is thinking of going to take to social devices, the authority is there to actually, apprehend you and, make you to face the law, and then you'll be sanctioned appropriately. So with that, that's why we have law and sanctions, in order to deter people from committing crime. Because, if you commit this crime, you are going to be sanctioned, you are going to go to prison and all that. So that will deter them and make them rather think positively. So the security agencies need to be up and doing. Security needs to be more tight. We know that our security architecture is loose. That's why the governors are clamoring for the state policing in order to strengthen security in various states, to reduce kidnapping and banditry and other, these are part of the social devices we're talking about. So the state policing is also one strategy that the governors are looking at, that, okay, why don't we do state police? And I think that is also in the confab report. It's also part of the confab report. Yes. So that's why I said that confab report that is gathering dust. One day they will just dust it again.
So, the police in your state is different from the ones in my own
Yes,
state.
they just remove security from the exclusive list, especially policing. They leave the military for the federal, but policing is going to be statewide, and that's what they're actually looking at. It's still on the front burner. The president is still looking at it, looking at how to pass it through the National Assembly, and all the necessary laws that need to be amended in order to accommodate that. So these are the things. One, security architecture is very strong. And I remember that word that Mr. President said, that there cannot be a kind of disorder in an orchestra or something, when he went to the National Security Advisor's office. So if the security agencies are working in unity, I believe people will be deterred from committing crime, and they can now begin to think positively. It's not only that because you don't have a job, because you are hungry, you want to take to crime. The law is there to apprehend you, and then you might end up where you are not actually willing to end. So that is to deter them from that. So they should also remember the government should be up and doing. Proper architecture should be put in place. People will not take to crime. They will rather, take to positive things than following the social device issues.
All right. Okay. How about the economic and political implication? What are the economic and political implications of this?
The economic implication is positive. In fact, that is why Mr. President is stamping his feet on the ground that let us implement this. The economic implication is that it will reduce the cost of governance. And then government will not spend so much. We'll be able to save some money for capital projects. That's the economic implication on the part of government spending. Now, on the part of people losing their jobs, there's going to be a kind of, good environment. We are waiting for the end at this tunnel. The president said there's surely going to be a light
at the end of the tunnel.
Hopefully. So we are still under the tunnel now, and we are in darkness, maybe possibly. So when we get to the end,
there will be light.
We will see light. So maybe by then, people will now begin to see, why we were suffering, why we couldn't do anything. Now we have several opportunities, and then life will be better for every one of us at the end of the tunnel. But now it's not easy. It's not it's not so good at all.
For the critics of this administration, they have come up to say that this has a political undertone to which hunt some persons.
Now I'll go to that's the economic distance. Now political now. I started by saying that we have an audacious president because he was not brought in by any political godfather. He was there based on the way the election went. I'm not going to delve into that because I'm not a politician.
You are an economist.
I'm an economist. So the way the election went, INEC declared him, and the Supreme Court also affirmed the election that is president. Fine. We are all there. He's our president, and we need to give him the support. Now, talking about political effects, maybe he's calculating 2027. That, okay, by 2027, I'm going to go for second term. If I'm implementing this report, how will it affect my acceptability by the people during the next general elections? I can tell you that Mr. President is doing all this audacious step now because he feels this is the best time. After 2 years, that's when he can begin to think of what's the next thing, in the next general election. But for now, he's critically thinking about governance. He's not considering politics for now. He has asked all his critics, all his opponents to join hands with him to see how to move the country forward. So he is not having any influence on his decision based on political decisions. As a matter of fact, he is even sitting well when it comes to politics because we have so many persons now defecting from their party to APC. It shows that other parties are now supporting him, though we still have the opposition.
That kind of instances before.
Oh yes, that when it's close to election, then they fly, they start jumping out.
One party to they jump from here to any party in governance.
All right, yeah, that happens. Sorry. But at least that's why before they will start jumping out, at least it will have been up to 2 years into his administration. And that's why this is the best time that I think he can actually implement this without having any political influence on his decision. And that's why the president has taken that step.
And for those that are having that belief system that the president is using this as a witch hunt to some persons that are not, maybe some persons or relations of people that are not supporting the government, what do you have to tell them?
No, I just think maybe those persons are trying to whip off sentiments into the whole issue. We are actually passing through serious economic challenge. The country is not making revenue the way we ought to. We have to go and be borrowing. So if we are borrowing and then you are still increasing cost of running government, still employing people under different agencies, and then you are now borrowing to pay salaries, or we get to the level of borrowing to pay salaries, borrowing to run MDAs, borrowing to buy exotic cars for different boards, management and all that. I think it's not about witch hunting. It's about, let us cut our coats according to our clothes. Sometimes somebody will even look at himself and tell himself the truth and say, this life I'm living, I cannot afford it. Let me, slow down.
Calm down.
And that's what the president has done. So I think those ones are just trying to whip off some sentiments, but critically, it's a positive decision to the economy.
For more emphasis again, according to the spokesperson of the government, the measure is aimed at cutting costs, but not without throwing anyone out of job. Somebody somewhere may be asking, how feasible can this be? Merge Ministry A and B, or one parastatal agency to the other, and you think that nobody is going to be touched or thrown away, thrown out of the job? How possible can this be?
Well, I look at that statement from two different sides.
Okay.
Maybe it's talking to the civil servants that were, employed into the civil service, that are working in these agencies. Yes, the government does not have any plan to retrench any of those workers. But you see, those are the top management of these agencies, like the PAs to the executive secretary, the DGs,
the SSA,
the SSA, all those special assistants, all those political appointments in agencies. The board, they have board of those agencies and parastatals. We have over 2,000 something boards. Remember, the president sacked them when he came into power. Over 2,000 boards of parastatals and agencies, and these people will also be collecting salaries.
And economy
this will reduce, or also reports will reduce that board of parastatal and agency. There will be no longer board because they will have merged or subsumed or scrapped. So that number of parastatals boards will reduce. Money is going to be saved from there. The executive secretary and management of those agencies that are going to become departments, they're also going to be scrapped. Those ones will be out of job. Nobody should deceive them. They will actually be out of job. But the civil servants that are actually working there, that have grown through the ranks of different levels and grades, in these agencies, they might not actually take them off.
Okay. Before now, economic analysts have argued that skills acquisition development initiative should be inculcated into the public service. Assuming you have to advise the government at a critical point as this, what advice would you give to the government, especially as it has to do with the introduction of skills development programs? Because if at the end of the day, some are laid off, I say God forbid to that, with skills development, at least some of them can think out of the box to make a living. So what would be your advice to the
yes, I think even the administration that brought about the Orosanye report, the same President Goodluck Jonathan's regime, they came up with the SureP. The SureP was a skill acquisition program for the Nigerian youth, and they intend to give them skills, give them some capital to start up a business, because they also know that government cannot continue to increase its costs of, running the government. And then they came up with, okay, let's train them on some skills so that let them be entrepreneurial, so that they can begin to earn something from the skills that, they've acquired. So skill acquisition is relevant at any point, at any time, any day. It's relevant to everyone. If you have one skill, you can continue to learn other skills. You don't know which one will be your breakthrough, So skill acquisition is one thing that government need to continue to invest in. We have a teeming youth that some persons have said they are lazy youths.
Are they really lazy?
Well, that's another argument. Some have said they are not employable. So we have so many things that they've said about the Nigerian youth, but I think they are teachable and they are trainable. So if government can invest in skill acquisition, we've seen some state governments like Imo State, Akwa Ibom, and other states, they've seriously invested in skill acquisition and giving soft loans, soft grants for this youth to actually start up business from the skill that they have actually acquired. This will, go a long way to reduce that social devices we are talking about. Making crime the order of the day. People will be engaged, and they have a lot of things to now do to earn a living for themselves.
Right. Skills acquisition is something that the government should venture into at all levels of governance, whether at the federal level, the state, and even the local government, so that people, even the public servants, can have something to do instead of depending on the government forever. We'll take a break now and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we would realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite.
This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of Aso Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, Aso Television DSTV Channel 392, Star Times Terrestrial Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, People's TV Channel 285, and UHF Channel 38.
Glad to know that you are here with us on the program Business and Economy, and our guest is an economic expert, Dr. Akintunde Ogunsola. He is making an analysis of the likely matters that may arise from the implementation of the Stephen Orosanyi panel report. Doctor, before we went on the break, you were making a lot of emphasis on the need for skills acquisition development initiative, and you said whether some of our viewers are, whether you're a public servant, whether you're a business person, whether you are unemployed, whether you're a student, there is need for you to acquire at least a skill to help you enjoy some streams of income. Now, somebody may be tempted to ask this question that, what are the skills? What kind of skills can I venture into?
There are so many skills actually there are so many skills that they can actually go into. Talking about entrepreneurial skills now. Yeah. The entrepreneurial skills are so much. These are skills that you can do with your hands, with your brain. You can be creative. It's talking about creativity. Yeah, in that part, in that sector. They can teach youth on how to make soap. They can teach them on how to bake. They can teach them on how to farm, and so many other things. It's just lack of information, breach that is actually making people to say, oh, no, let's go to school, let's go and get the degrees so that we'll work in CBN. and work in, SEC and the big organizations, but not everybody can actually go into that. As you are waiting to actually get into those white-collar jobs that they are dreaming for, they can start with some, manual skills that you don't even need so much capital to actually, start working. Like somebody can learn how to make hair, somebody can learn how to barb. People will want to barb. You can own a barbing salon, and you are managing, and you are getting some money. You employ some people, and this will make employment generation increase. It will increase employment and reduce unemployment. So skill acquisition is actually the way to go to grow our MSMEs in Nigeria, and also to ensure that youths are not out of job. They will have job to do, because somebody somewhere is thinking of how to be creative, how to bring out nothing,
be a solution
how
provider.
to bring out something from nothing, be a solution provider. If you feel that, so many people are doing this, we can start exporting. We have the African Free Trade Agreement. People are not still leveraging on it. I said it then that when they signed the agreement, that I hope Nigeria will not be at the receiving end, because Nigeria has population in market. So people can stay outside Nigeria and be sending, and we are consuming and be dumping it here. Rather than we producing, meeting up our own local needs, and also taking it out, to other countries, So that's what we actually need to look at. All these advantage, all these platforms are there for our youth to actually take advantage of them, so that they will not be out of job, so that they can, be able to take care of themselves.
Okay, while we visited the streets and some marketplaces and where people are to seek their opinion on a particular topic, like this topic we are treating before coming on air, and most of the people that we spoke with, they came up to complain, and their complaint was on the timing of this implementation of the policy. According to them, they said, given the shocked economic climate, how can the implementation of this report be feasible, irrespective of the good decision that comes with it?
The implementation is very feasible. Right? The timing, just like I said,
given the economic situation.
Yes, things are hard, so let's still wait a little so that people can have some money and all that. No, you don't whip up sentiment into economic policies. It's just like saying, why should CBN increase monetary policy rates when people are already suffering and inflation is high?
Some of them ask that
but
question.
That is the way out. That is the way out, actually, because we have so much money in circulation. But people will say, where is the money? When they hear we have so much money in circulation, they say, but the money is
where is the money?
But statistics shows that so much money is in circulation because possibly there is hoarding of currency, and that is making inflation to actually go up. People are now looking for more money to buy a few goods. So just relating it to that, you will also say, why should we increase monetary policy rates when inflation is already so high, the economy is biting hard, and you are increasing interest that people want to bring money to invest now, want to go and borrow. You are now increasing the interest. Is it that you want to kill them? But that is actually the way out of inflation. So the same thing applies to the Oronsoye report. Yes, government is also looking for money. They are saying that the revenue is actually not enough for the expenditure that they want to do, that they have to even start planning how to go and borrow. But instead of you to go and borrow, why don't you look at, this is something that all of us are applying, even to our individual, ourselves. We look at it that, okay, my salary is small. Rather than for me to go and be borrowing to meet up this need, why don't I reduce? They say if you are eating 3 times a day, reduce it to 2.
Or 1, possibly.
Or 1, possibly, so that you reduce costs. If you have been going out Monday to Sunday, you are traveling every time, reduce your traveling. Instead of you to say, let me go and borrow so that I can meet up and continue to travel. So this is actually the idea behind implementing it now. Government is also saying, okay, no, instead of us just continuous borrowing instead is too much. Let's reduce our costs and see how we can make do with what we have, so that we don't have to borrow so much again, to meet up.
Remember this saying that a borrower is always a slave to the
lender, yes. So the president is also looking for a way out of that. Yeah, people will say let him start with himself and the senators, and yes, people will say that. But I would say let us start from somewhere.
It's like from this question I want to ask you, from the people's opinion, again,
yes.
Some of them have also raised that point because they described the ministerial appointment as being over-bloated on one breath, and on another, they plan to merge. Is it a case of an afterthought?
It's not a case of an afterthought.
So what is it?
This report has been in existence before the administration came into power. And getting into office, the president quickly looked at the shelf. What are the things I have in this office? What was handed over to him? And he saw something like, but this one looks very good, very, very beautiful. Why don't we implement it? Let's go ahead and he just pulls it out and took it to FEC. And say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I have this report here. Can we just approve?
Let us take a look on this report.
Yes. In fact, he said implement within 2 weeks, straight up. And that is it. That's the power of the executive. And because he has seen the benefit, the benefit of implementing that report far outweighs the cost. Looking at the cost-benefit analysis, the benefit is that it will help government to save more money so that they can invest or channel those savings into capital or development projects.
We have to even reduce our borrowing.
Reduce borrowing.
If possible.
Everybody have been talking about borrowing is too much, borrowing is too much. Yeah, this is part of the way.
But this time they are not talking about that. They're not talking about borrowing. They are looking at maybe the one that concerns them.
Yes, but that's why I said it is gradual. Let's start from here. As maybe the president's approach is the bottom-up approach. Okay. Let's start from down, and then we'll be taking it up gradually.
Okay, and now because of our time, assuming you are the president of Nigeria, what would you have done differently on the implementation of this particular report?
I will not do anything differently. I'll do what they are doing. Yes, because I also, buy into that idea that let us reduce the cost. Everybody has been saying this. It's just like the subsidy. Everybody has been, saying it everywhere. The cost of governance is high. Government should reduce the cost of governance instead of borrowing. Now it's reducing the cost of governance. They are saying it is not the right time. So when will be the right time?
I don't know. I don't know when will be the right time. Maybe when the economy, when all the economic situation is normalized.
In fact, the last administration was supposed to have implemented this report. Possibly they look at political and other things. That's why they kept it aside. But this administration came and said, no, I don't need any political decision or political criteria before I can implement this. So if I were to be him, it's long overdue. And just like I said, the confab report is still there. I'm waiting for what's going to happen to that. So they are picking small from it. Okay. Talking about the state policing. It's inside the confab report.
Okay, so in all of these reports, panel reports, and from the Orosanya report and to the
2014 confab report.
What should be the expectation of Nigerians from the implementation of all of these reports?
The expectation should be that not just them, not just as individuals, trying to cut down our costs. Government is also wanting to cut down costs as well, because it is time for us to cut down costs and not spend unnecessarily so much. So the citizens should expect that they should also continue to cut down their costs at this current time that we are in now, these hard times. One way to survive now is for you to reduce your costs. Go for the necessities, don't go for luxury. We are not in the era of luxury now. We are in the era of basic necessities like food, which is also high now. Everybody is complaining about the price of food. So if the price of food is high, there are alternatives among the food. If you are used to eating rice 3 times in a day before, you can start going for corn or go for beans. That one is cheaper. So everybody should look for alternative to cut down the costs at this point in time.
All right. According to our experts and the guests we have today, even individuals should all go out to cut their costs. You should go for necessary or basic necessities, as the case may be. We need to reduce the cost of governance instead of borrowing. So not just on an individual basis, even on governance. And that is the size of our package on this edition of Business and Economy. And the guest has been an economic expert, Dr. Akintunde Ogunsola, who is also a regular guest on this program. Doctor, we want to thank you so much for honoring our invitation to come into this edition of the program.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
And to you out there, our esteemed audience, as usual, we thank you for spending part of your time with us on this edition of the program. Stay with us for more of our programming. I am Ile Emeje.